a new episode of Agile Retrospectives, the podcast where we look at Agile retrospectively. I'm Dan-Suciu.
I'm Bogdan Mureșan.
And today we are thrilled to welcome Klaus Leopold. Klaus, hi. Welcome.
Hello, hi, thanks for having me.
Thank you so much for joining us today. It's a real pleasure to have you on our podcast. I have to say this, when we first came across your book, Rethinking Agile, both Bogdan and I eagerly read it because it truly gave us a fresh perspective on Agile, especially when it comes to the challenges of implementing agility in large organizations. And I don't know if you know, but a year ago we had Cliff Hazel on the podcast where we discussed flight levels and how to scale Agile across different levels of an organization. So today we are diving into your book and exploring the critical distinction you make between Agile teams on one hand and business agility on the other hand. So to get things started, could you tell us a bit about what inspired you to write Rethinking Agile?
The book is not very thick. It's not a very big book, but that's the challenge. It took quite long to condense everything to this teeny tiny format. Not teeny tiny, but to this small format. So why or how did I get to this point? I'm now working as I would say, consultant, someone who's like helping organizations to improve how they act on the market for quite a long time, almost or 15 years. And Rethinking Agile is basically the very best of what I've seen, how agile transformations are being approached in companies. So it's really like, it's basically a story about the company. And this is, I think, a quite prototypical story, a quite typical story for many organizations. So it's just like condensed experience in the end. So nothing magic, just what I see, what's working or not.
Mm-hmm. Is it based on a real successful story?
Well, yes and no. So yes, because everything you read is real, but it's not one company. I've put some companies together and like wrote as it is one company. But it's only the very best of what I've seen. So you could go beyond this actually and put way more into it. But these were like the highlights, kind of the condensed highlights.
One of the stories which I'm saying from time to time is that a long time ago when we started, and both me and Dan were like big fans. We are working together for a lifetime. We're big fans of the Agile mindset. It fits us like very well. And at one point, after some years, I become very proud that I'm starting to get mature in thinking in an agile way. I'm starting to understand better and better some of the frameworks like Scrum or so. But at one point, I started to be like a little disappointed when people started to like hear, oh, you are an agile expert, so we are doing stand-ups and we are doing Scrum. And I was like, oh no, it's not about it's not about that. You, in order to deliver like big products and so on, you need much more. You need the entire company to think and act and align in a certain way. And from time to time, when I'm reading a book which clicks with my, say, ideas or my beliefs and brings even for me more clarity in what I have in my mind, it's really really refreshing and it's really good. And that was the feeling when I some years ago when I read your book, like oh, now if I want to explain I can start with this book. I can recommend with this book.
Perfect.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah, thanks for this. So, I mean, this is actually the intent of the book. So, the idea was not to write a textbook. It was more like I had this idea in mind. Okay, there is someone who wants to learn a little bit about more about business agility and what it differentiates from like what you just said. Let's have a stand-up meeting, and now we are agile, kind of. So my idea was always, okay, a manager steps into a plane or into a train, gets the book, and he needs to be able to finish it after, after the plane flight or train ride. So that the essentials of what really matters are being transported without this buzzword bullshit. So it's not about, yes, Scrum and only 15 minutes for the stand-up meeting. And if the stand-up meeting is 20 minutes, you will burn in Scrum hell, or I don't know, is it 10 minutes? And I don't know if someone joins the retrospective or is not part of the retrospective, then the devil is inside you. And I was like, no, let's let's get rid of all this like bullshit bingo, and let's just focus on what's really the point. So the point is not that we are using flip charts and no more electronic tools and stuff like this, and that we are having stand-up meetings. But what's really, like, from a systemic point of view, what differentiates companies that act good from companies who could be improved? So that was the intent, actually. And I hope this is getting across.
Yeah, and also from the title, because it's Rethinking Agile, and after that it's that emphasize that an agile team or agile teams alone do not create business agility. So you try to emphasize this. Could you explain what this means for organizations and why it's such an important distinction?
Yeah. So that's really a recurrent theme that I've seen over more than 10 years. So make these teams agile, kind of. So the idea is, if you take a company apart into the single parts, you somewhere end up at the team level. And now let's make all these teams agile, and then we have a agile company. So much about the theory. The problem is that this doesn't work. So the point is, and what I try to get use in the book is a metaphor, a picture of a keyboard. So if you have a keyboard, and if you think that all the keys on the keyboard are single teams, and you are in the business of writing letters, agile now. And now the customer asks you, write a love letter for me. So it's quite tricky, right? So it doesn't make any sense if you have the best A team on your planet or the best S team where smoke comes out of the keyboard. The point is, it's not so important that each and every team is high performing in pressing their key on the keyboard. It's way more important that we make sure that the right team is working on the right stuff at the right time. And this is, like the main concept of we need to zoom out, actually, right? So let's not focus on the single teams. I mean, if one team alone can deliver value to the market, perfect. Then team agility makes sense. But let's focus on value delivery. Let's not focus on the org chart. A team is something on the org chart. I, as customer, don't care about your org chart. I want to get value delivered. And if there are multiple teams involved to deliver value, we need to zoom out a little bit so that we coordinate that the right team is working on the right stuff at the right time. And that's exactly the point of flight levels. So flight levels is also like you can fly, or you have to fly a little bit higher. I don't want to optimize one single team. I want to optimize value delivery. And this is why I need to fly higher. I need to see all the teams, and then we can make sure that the right team is working on the right stuff at the right time. Yeah, that's the idea of the keyboard, actually. Yeah, if this makes sense.
Of course, it makes sense, but we need somebody who has to coordinate everything. And you said in your book something which we found to be very, very difficult. So you mentioned that to make a business agile, you should start from the top. And
Yes.
from our experience, people in the top positions are often the hardest to reach. And we had so many training sessions and workshops we conduct, and participants frequently suggest that we should hold similar courses for their managers. And we say,
Yeah.
right, that's a very good idea, but they are not here and they are so busy. And sometimes they are not so open because they think that the people in those teams should change, not them.
Yeah.
And
And
do
that's
you
the
have
reason.
any advice on how to engage them and how to involve leadership more effectively?
Give them the book, Rethinking Agile. I
Of
mean,
course.
this was really, that's what I was having in mind. A manager who needs to receive this message in a very concise and short and accessible way. So the thing is, you need to have at least some basic understanding of system thinking and how work systems actually work if you get this message across. I mean, it sounds so simple. If everybody's just working faster, work is being finished faster. The exact opposite is true. If everybody's working very fast, we finish work very, very slowly. So it's not intuitive. That's the problem. So it's quite counterintuitive. So the thing is, you need to get this message delivered to higher management. And in order to deliver this message, there needs to be a problem for this higher management that you can solve with this. So I think, especially these days where there's quite some economical pressure out there, at least in the German-speaking countries. And I guess it's not so different with you.
No,
Yeah.
unfortunately.
So it's even more important that we don't keep people busy, but that we deliver results. And the thing is, what's in it for me? That's a question the higher manager has to answer. And if he or she doesn't see a problem, then it's quite hard. So it's like in psychotherapy. I mean, you cannot heal someone who doesn't want it. Yeah. So it really starts at the core that what's in it for me. If you have this crystal clear, then deliver something like this book. I'm quite sure that there are some pieces in there which resonate, or work out these pieces of the book where the management says, oh, wow, that's a problem I have, and I see a solution here. And then we can continue to talk. Because if there is no problem, I mean, maybe many people see the problem, but if the decision makers don't see the problem, there is no problem, at least for them.
Yeah, it's funny that we receive this like many times. This advice, no matter that we are training teams or we are training managers, always somebody saying like go to the even upper level because they don't seem to align on this, and it's hard. But also the other way around. Sometimes from the upper managers, it's hard to instill some of the thinking and the practices in some of the teams. And I really had very recently some of the teams where I work. Two things very related to this. One, big teams, a big team which, and when I'm saying big, it's like 12 people, let's say 12, 14 people, which we try to split into in order to focus, to be more focused, two smaller team, more focused. And the people from the team were like, oh, we will not, we don't want to split because we discuss, we need to know what the others know and so on. But after they tried, let's give it a try, see how it works. They were actually very like, whoa, but we are now much more effective. We don't have a problem with synchronization and so on. And the second one, which was related to work in progress limit, everybody wanted to start everything. And when we set some boundaries, like, whoa, but we are finishing now work much faster. And as you said, it's counterintuitive, right? These techniques are counterintuitive. And when you act from the top, it's easier to say like either you do it, which will not have much traction, but when you explain why and you say, okay, let's try it and we analyze the results together, you have much more chances to make it happen. But literally, it's very hard to have a leverage when you want to do it bottom up, like
Yeah.
because as Dan said, a lot of the times the people who got there, me as I got in a position of director, of a VP, whatever the position I am, I got there because I had some results. I'm doing things in a certain way. I rely on my experience. I rely on my success.
Yeah.
Then it comes a different way of thinking and approaching, which sometimes it doesn't give me the comfort, like I know what will happen in 6 months. And it's crazy because I have to budget it. I have to explain to the
Yeah.
P&L section where the money will go for and what we will gain from there. And it's way, way harder. So
Yeah.
that's why we need to find like different tools, I would say, or ways to all these habits that we have goods at the leadership level to transform them
Yeah.
in different like ways of seeing the data, ways of seeing the money, ways of seeing the results, which based on what all three of us are doing here, will
Yeah.
make the station much healthier. But yeah,
Yeah.
hard to convince them.
And that's exactly what I also see. And I mean, two thoughts pop up in my mind when I hear you talk. So one thing is, as you said, so bottom up might be one approach. Yes, but you hit a ceiling somewhere quite soon. And the other thing is that this bottom up approach is also, or bottom up, start with the teams. Doesn't have to be bottom up, but start at the team level. The problem is that it's very, very expensive because if you take a company, let's say, I don't know, 2,000 people, we're talking about hundreds of teams, like I don't know, 200 teams or something like this. And now you start there by introducing some fancy new way of work. You change entirely how the people work. So this is really expensive, right? But if we go back to the keyboard picture, and if we just make sure that the right team work on the right stuff at the right time, so if we fly a little bit higher, we can keep the change energy comparably low in the organization. We don't have to change how people work, how they are doing their work. So if some teams want to do Scrum, perfect, do it. If some other teams are more happy with Kanban, perfect, do it. And if other teams are just working, that's also fine, right? So we just want to make sure that the right team is working on the right stuff at the right time. So the costs, and especially in these days, I mean, companies are really cost sensitive these days. I mean, I don't think that companies can afford it anymore to start on a team level. You need to fly higher to solve the problems. That's one thing that popped up in my mind, and the other thing is we need to give these higher level managers concrete, actionable practices and advice. So what I see quite often is that there is, I don't know, leadership training going on and you talk about stuff and everything, but it's all so fluffy kind of. So the problem is, what do I have to do? Right. So, I mean, yes, I understand keyboard and make the teams work. What do I say? The right team is working on the right stuff at the right time. But how the F does this work? Yeah. So give me some advice. And I think this is exactly where flight levels kicks in because we have this advice there. So if it's about coordinating teams, we exactly know how this works. And you can get this message across in a very easy way so that people not only understand it, but they know what to do. So one thing is, I understand it. Yes. But now tell me what to do. And I think that's the one of the missing points, especially for higher level management. I mean, they have something to lose, right? So if they say we're going to do this and it's not working, that's not a career boost. Let me put it that way, right? So you need to know the effect and you need to know what to do. And I think these two things are really, very important. Guidance.
And this flight levels model is very useful, but it's very simple. So from your book, I understood that one of your key points was about simplifying agility. So to moving away from rigid frameworks. And on the other hand, we have SAFe, which is very popular right now, and it is very prescriptive. And I think just because there are so many recipes somehow there, a lot of people are looking at that and they say, yeah, they will tell me what we have to do, what we should do in our company, in our organization. And it's a huge difference between the philosophy in your book about business agility and what SAFe, for instance, offers. But there are so many other frameworks.
And I think if I may make a point here, I think this is something which is somehow misunderstood by many people. So often what I see is, shall we do flight levels or SAFe? Flight levels or less, or Scrum, or whatever. It's always like this either or. But flight levels is actually a different thing. So there are 3 flight levels, right? Flight level 1 is the operational level. That's how teams are working. Flight level 2 is the coordination level. We make sure that the right team is working on the right stuff at the right time. And flight level 3 is the strategic level. So what about the future? And the point is, you do not introduce flight levels. I claim each and every organization is already working with these 3 flight levels. Because if you take a look at the company, there are teams running around doing some work. So flight level 1 is definitely there. Flight level 2 is also there. It's about coordination, making sure the right team is working on the right stuff at the right time. Some companies maybe do some project planning. That's one way of coordination. Others are doing big room planning, SAFe, for instance. That's one way of coordination. So there is coordination. The point is that it's sometimes not very tangible. So we don't know how it is, and it's not tightly coupled to flight level 1. So that's what we actually visualize in flight levels. We just say, okay, that's the way how you're currently doing your coordination. Does this work for you? If not, let's change it. But the point is, when you make it explicit, you can pinpoint what to change. And I also say flight level 3 is in each and every organization there. We don't need to introduce it because hopefully someone is thinking about the future of the company. Yeah. And so flight level 3 is also there, strategy, maybe better or worse from one company to another. But what we do when we start with flight level thinking, we just make it explicit how it is these days. Yeah. And no matter if you're doing OKR on flight level 3, if you are, I don't know, using the strategizer framework, if you are in KPI, MBO, I don't know, Hoshin country, there is so many stuff out there. Flight level doesn't care. It just says, okay, let's make it tangible what's already there. Let's see where the problems are. Let's improve the problems. And that's the essential point. Let's connect them together. Because in so many organizations, they are good in doing strategy because Hoshin Kanri or OKR or whatever is the latest shit and is just the best framework ever. And then they have some Scrum teams running around. But it's not connected. That's the thing. So one silo in the organization is dreaming where the company is heading in the next 5 years, and the others are thinking, what's on my plate for the next sprint? So there's a huge void in between. And with flight levels, you can actually connect this. So flight levels basically takes what's already there, no matter if you're doing SAFe or whatever, and it connects all these isolated agile islands to one big thing. And so this either or is a misunderstanding. Let me put it that way, if this makes sense.
Okay.
In fact, exactly related to this, small spoiler alert. I don't know if we managed to get the episode before the conference next week. Hopefully, that's the plan. But at this conference, we will release a result of a very interesting study that we made on the agile leadership. And one of the things which I found very similar to what you are saying is that exactly when it's related to vision, like the future plans, where we're going, and strategy, the steps that it will bring us there, and so on. And we get to the execution, there is in the perception of the respondents, and we had quite many, it seems that the vision is pretty clear for who's building the vision, like for
Yes.
for the executive and so on. And it's very close, much closer than I personally expected, also to the team level, but it has like a small drop in the middle management,
Yeah.
which was unexpected, very unexpected for me. I was thinking personally that it will go like this, straight down. But related to what you're saying, one possible interpretation is that, and this I know that they are not connecting to like roles in the organization and so on, but it's exactly on how you pass the messages and how you ensure that what you're seeing from the clouds,
Yeah.
from the executive, it gets in the right way. The message gets there to the operational, to the top level. And
Yeah.
sometimes somewhere in the middle, it has like a small bump when the wheels are not oiled. Like I don't know if
Yeah.
the expression exists in English, but in
Yeah.
Romanian, it's the
Yeah. This would be in German, would be the same. Yeah.
The gears, the
Um,
gears.
yeah, the gears, yes. Yeah, but that's interesting actually. I didn't think there is like in the middle. I was also thinking, like you said, okay, on top most, then it's like decreasing, but that's interesting. So looking forward to the study.
Yeah, and it's not a big gap, but it's like almost everything that we analyze based on vision, strategy, how the message are,
Yeah,
and so on. And for me, it was like, whoa, what's happening here?
yeah, yeah, yeah. That's
It relates to how important it's actually to connect the all these dots, all these levels, from the
yeah.
operational, the like low level execution on to actually the vision and how we get to the vision.
Yeah, again, that's also one point of flight levels because I see this in only a few companies where you can really understand, okay, this team is working on this, and this somehow is tied to this strategy or to this outcome that we want to achieve. So most of the time, strategy is something like is great PowerPoint, and they send out the PowerPoint. This is our strategy. Have fun. And yeah, people continue to work whatever they are working on. And at the end of the year, they are doing this backward mapping. They are like, we were working on this project. This fits into this strategy bucket, digitalization maybe. We were working on this project, AI, whatever. So you find the bucket where you assign your project to. So that's what I see so many times. Well, we need to like reverse this. It's not about backward mapping. The strategy is there to guide us. So that's where we are actually want to fly to, right? And now, yeah, the strategy sets the path, and it's not a justification tool. Yeah, and that's again the flight level 3, where you can actually set this path and use the flight level 2 and the flight level 1 to connect the strategy to the operations. Missing in so many companies, unfortunately.
Could this be like it just came to my mind, like a misinterpretation of what actually the empowerment of the teams means, like in terms of like autonomy and what they decide, and it was forgotten that we still need to be aligned. I remember that really cool drawing from Spotify with the manager who was thinking, I hope they will do this, but because they are
Yeah,
autonomous, but he's not saying what they should do. So some of the times, like, okay, we empower the teams and we say they know the business, they know tech stuff, or what they do talk with the product, with and
yeah,
so on. Maybe because the strategy is not clearly broadcasted or passed or not enough and reinforced or realigned to the market needs, the teams have the autonomy to choose the wrong thing, basically,
yeah,
to work on. And at the end of the year, we said like, oh, we work hard, put a lot of soul, we put a lot of effort. So now let's make a check, and we did it, and let's see
yeah.
where this fits.
Yeah, I mean, I think there is no autonomy without the feedback loop and without alignment. So I think strategy is definitely not a top-down thing. So I mean, that's a bit of the problem when you take a look at flight level. So it looks like very hierarchical, but it's not. So strategy is actually something that comes before something else. So it's more like a timely manner and not so much a hierarchy thing. But you always need the feedback loop from the team to the strategy. So there is this feedback loop, and full autonomy. Yes, this sounds great, but we also need alignment. So we need like a frame where we can move in, right? So sometimes it's like, okay, there is autonomy, do whatever you want, kind of. I mean, so it's like, the cows on the on the grass, and then someone opens the gates, and the cows are like, eh. So, yeah, what shall I do now, right? And maybe some of the cows go out of the gate, but they go somewhere where we don't need them, right? So there is no autonomy without borders, actually. So this is your play field. Play in this field, and we need to set these constraints and borders. And only then autonomy is possible, actually, in my point of view.
I wanted to mention something because next Thursday on 27th of March, you'll be the keynote speaker at the MT Agile Olympics conference. We called it in this way here in Cluj-Napoca. And the focus will be on many common complaints about Agile. Things like too many meetings, or there is this association between Agile and micromanagement, and there are many other things. So it seems like these frustrations often stem from Agile not being implemented properly. Why do you think this happens, and what can organizations do to avoid these pitfalls? Because I know a lot of people who are very good, professionally speaking, they're very good technical person, but they hate Agile. And they tell me, yeah, we stay hours and hours in meetings, talking too much instead of doing things. It's not in isolation. It doesn't happen only in one company or another. It seems to be very, very often.
Yeah, the A word. So I think agile is becoming to this. Yeah, he said the A word these days. I don't know why and where and how it came to this point, but I think, I don't know, there was a time where companies really earned a lot of money, where there was no economical pressure and nothing, and agile was kind of trendy, and many companies, they tried to do it, but there was not a real goal behind it. And I'm just sharing my experience. I don't know if this is a common, but that's something what I observed. So there was not really a need for it, but still there was this demand. We need this agile, and then agile coaches and whatever, they popped out of nowhere. So it felt, especially in the German speaking countries, I mean, it feels like you throw a rock out of the window and you hit an agile coach or a scrum master. So everybody's agile coach or scrum master these days. And I think the problem with this is that also there are people who don't know what they are doing. So they run around with fancy flip charts, and they're like, yeah, we don't have to use computers in meetings, and PowerPoint is bullshit. We're only writing flip charts. And they're like, what? What does this have to do with agility? And I'm just sharing my experience. Maybe this is completely different in other areas. And I think this was a little bit of dissatisfaction. So companies were investing in this agility. Everybody says, yeah, I'm agile guru. And then they invested some money, and they were like, what? And that's it? Now I don't know, have to hack ourselves before we start the meeting, and that's agility. And we are not allowed to use computers. So there needs to be more meat, if you know what I mean, right? And I think this is maybe part of the problem. But yeah, I think that it's a lack of this understanding again. And again, that goes back to Rethinking Agile, because this is exactly what I observed when I was writing Rethinking Agile. So people were talking about stuff and these discussions that were going on in these companies. I was like, what are you talking about? You can, I don't know, a meeting of 1.5 hours, and the goal of the meeting is to decide who is part of a retrospective. And I was like, what? I mean, you can burn and waste money and time, yes, for sure, but this doesn't make any sense. So it's just a lack of understanding in so many situations. But yeah, I don't know. It's just me. Sorry.
We like exactly related to this, I want to disclose another insights from the study we are releasing on on next Thursday, but I will not do it. But retrospectives, yes, yeah, it's a pain. So exactly like you said, sometimes it's missing the purpose and why we are doing this and how we should think around this, and we focus too much. This is happening from my point of view when we don't understand exactly something. When you don't understand something, it's easier to follow the rules, and
Yes.
eventually, to one point, you will get it. Yes, it's a real pain.
Yeah.
Um, we got to from optimizing the work to like dispatching information to the company. We got to some anti patterns now, and at the end, things that should not be okay. I do hate that agile has become like, as you said, the A word in many cases, and because of a forced adoption, so a lot of the time, and not understanding like the insights. Because me personally, I love it, and I found it helpful many times. That doesn't mean that the project had success many times, because it's also happened that, but it was the right approach for some situations, some projects, many
Yeah.
projects that we had. Now, if we are getting close to the end of our discussion, and usually we try to draw a conclusion over the discussion, and this time we will let you the honor if you want to share like a final thought, like something insightful to our listeners. No pressure.
So yeah, something insightful. A tip for your life, you mean?
Yes.
Tja, when you are showering in a bathtub, the curtain always inside of the bathtub. This is this brings you maybe further in your life. No, but kidding aside, I don't know. I think it's really about understanding what's what's going on. And this is not only true for agility. So don't follow any freaking frameworks or whatever where people say, okay, that's how you have to do it. No, you are allowed to think. And you should use this privilege, right? So it's no longer, I mean, we can talk about how school education works, but it feels like school education. I don't say that this is the best school education, but at least in Austria it was like this. These are the rules. You have to learn this, and then you have to do this, right? And I think the same is being applied in companies, and somewhere the brain is yeah, missing. And yeah, you are allowed to think. Maybe that's the takeaway I want that people take away from this episode.
Cool. Klaus, thank you. Thank you for sharing these insightful perspectives with us. And let's say your take on Agile is very refreshing. And I'm pretty sure our listeners will have a lot to reflect on.
Perfect. Thanks for having me.
Thank you, everybody who listened. I'm Dan Suciu.
I'm Bogdan Mureșan.
And as always, we welcome your thoughts, questions, and feedback on our podcast Facebook page. We look forward to hearing from you. Until next time, stay agile.